SteamWorld Quest, Hand of Gilgamech, is a turn-based RPG card game, currently free from Prime Gaming until the 19th of February 2025. I've played a SteamWorld game before, SteamWorld Heist, which was a slightly different game. It was a turn-based tactical RPG, so I was interested in checking this version out. Here's what I think of it after I played 12 hours and finished the game. All the SteamWorld games happen in a universe with robots as the main people, and there's plenty of puns and jokes based around this fact. In this one, we've got a swords and sorcery medieval take on the franchise, where we embark on a quest to protect our town from an invading army commanded by a Dark Lord. Very original. I like the animation style. It made me think of sort of simple paper models with movable limbs, though there's more movement during fights than that sort of suggests. That's more a thing in the cutscenes. A bonus of this style is that it really works with the robotic nature of our protagonists. So it feels thematic rather than kind of lazy or lackluster. What isn't lackluster is the music. There's a number of really good tracks when you're fighting, particularly when you're fighting like the big battles. There's a big rock metal numbers that set the scene really well. And more chill backing music for the run-of-the-mill fights against sort of the trash mobs. Gameplay has you bouncing between story cutscenes, exploration on a map, which is a bunch of discrete areas, a sort of very roguelike type of environment, and also bounce between the fights. There are a lot of cutscenes, and they introduce us to our characters, a ragtag band of robots that join the calls as you go along, some of them kind of reluctantly. You don't have a choice of accepting or rejecting their help here, they just join the squad. You end up with 5 members, but you can only put 3 of them in the fighting squad at any one point. The characters that sit on the bench do still gain some experience, but it's not as much as those that actually fight. And it's a big difference, to be fair. The active characters at the end of my playthrough had double the XP of the benched ones. It does make it a little bit difficult to swap them out, unless you do a little bit of grinding. As it's an RPG, your characters have stats. They're really straightforward. You've got health, strength, magic, and luck, which determines your crit chance as far as I can tell. You do have gear, but there's not that much of it. You can only have 1 weapon and 2 accessories equipped on each character. They provide basic stats, but also give you things like resistances, boost to damage types, and lots of other things. The weapons do have a little bit more, but I'll get into that in a bit. We need to talk about combat first. When you get into a fight, you get a chance to play 3 cards from the deck you've prepared. Some of these are basic cards that build cogs. Others will be spenders, which spend those cogs to cast a range of abilities, and generally the more cogs they take to cast, the stronger they are. You always go first in battle, and you get to play all of your cards before the enemy plays theirs, though there are some sort of reaction cards that a few enemies do have. While that's all standard deck building stuff, there are a few additions here that I quite liked. First off is the weapons that I was talking about. Weapons are specific to each character. For example, Armily uses swords and Copernica uses spellbooks. Each weapon type provides 1 of 3 combo bonus actions, which are triggered when you play 3 cards from an individual character in a single turn. The combo action gets added as a 4th card, and they can be really useful. I preferred Copernica's ability that gives everyone decent damage mitigation shields, though it's not always possible to line up 3 of one character's abilities in a turn. You do have 2 redraws, and you can get more from cards, but even then it's still not always possible. Each character's deck only has 8 cards in it, so there isn't a lot of wiggle room, especially considering that you need both the cog building cards and the big spenders. So deck building is something that you really do want to look into. You can also grant bonuses on some abilities by playing a card from another character first. For example, Galileo has a big finishing move called Gigaton Punch, that deals 515% strength as physical damage. But if you play an Armily card before this, it adds another 200% damage to the Gigaton Punch. There aren't many of these cards, but there is a lot of room to play with combos to really harness those synergies. I can see you being able to craft a really OP team composition. As you progress through the story, a bunch of challenges are thrown up by the game's enemies, from wraiths that can fade into untouchable mist for a round, to cauldron demons that heal if you hit them with fire damage. You have the ability to inspect an enemy at any point in the fight to learn what their resistances are and what their playable cards are. There is also a compendium in the extras menu that goes through all of these details. I enjoyed the combat. I didn't dive that much into min-maxing and setting up the combos. Playing it on normal difficulty, I went with a really straightforward build of a healer, shielder, DPS mage and just DPS fighter with a bit of self-healing, and that got me all the way through the game. There were a couple of times that I had to swap out old outdated skills for new ones or just slightly change up the cards that I was bringing in, but I didn't really find any of it that difficult. The final boss fight was actually a little bit boring. It has like 4 or 5 stages and all but one of those is an identical repeat of the previous phase. I did it on the first try, so it was a little bit underwhelming, which was a shame. Fortunately, the battle before that was much better. There is a reason I stuck with the same build though. It's actually really expensive to buy new cards and deck out your team with the best gear. I ran out of materials before I bought all of the cards that I wanted, and that was me focusing entirely on only the 3 characters I was playing. You can buy equipment, upgrade your cards and buy new cards from the shop. The shop always appears in every new chapter in a specific area and always gets updated with new gear and new cards as you go along. It is possible to replay any chapter, so it might be possible to farm golds and mats, but even there's an issue, and to explain that I need to explain the story. The story was actually pretty decent. It was a bit slow to start with, but I ended up being pretty engaged and I wanted to see where it went. The humour didn't really work for me, and there's a lot of humour, in fact most of it is humorous. But you know, I'm a grumpy old man, I'm sure it'll work for a lot of people. There are a lot of cutscenes, a lot. And it moved the story along and gave us some characterisation, so I don't have an issue with that. Where the issue comes in is if you want to replay a chapter. You probably do, because there's secrets to collect on each map, which typically give you treasure like golds, materials and even cards sometimes. So when you finish a chapter and see that only 50% is complete, you do want to go back. The problem is all those cutscenes will replay again, and it's not that easy to skip them. There is a skip option, but it skips little sections of the cutscene. So you end up spending a lot more time than you really want by going back through all the cutscenes again. The issue is compounded because when you're replaying a chapter and you finish it, the game automatically puts you onto the next chapter, and you have to go through those cutscenes, quit the game, back to the main menu and then reload the game to get back to where you were previously. I replayed 2 chapters and it was irritating enough that I just gave up on it. There is an arena where you can play through fights that throw up a bunch of interesting scenarios. It pits you against 5 waves of enemies, and I played 8 out of the 10 leagues that they present you before I hit a wall. I just couldn't get through having permanent poison against enemies that fully heal each turn with the basic build that I had. Winning those fights grants gold, materials and accessories, though the levels of gold and stuff aren't that high, so it's not really a way to make that much money. It might be worth it if you're a bit short of cash and mats though, for a single card or one particular item that makes your build. The fights are fun. I did enjoy them. If that's not enough, there's also a new game plus once you finish the campaign, which makes all of your enemies more difficult, but you obviously keep all the stuff that you've already got. So I can see you being able to max everything out at that point. I enjoyed this game. The battles were fun, the story was interesting, eventually, and there's a good range of build options and tactics you can employ to make your team your own and really focus on a build. I'd say veteran players of the genre, there's plenty here for you to enjoy. You might want to go up to a bit of a higher difficulty rating though. It's also pretty welcoming for new players. There's an easier difficulty option if you're finding it difficult, and it's not so complicated that it'll put off new players. This is a solid recommend for me. Okay, I'm off to oil my joints. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.